What if Jaime Lannister killed Ned Stark in King's Landing? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Ned winces and feels the pain blurring his vision. He trembles and tries to look up, seeing Jaime Lannister standing over him with a smile on his face. He seems a bit disappointed to have their duel cut short, but Jaime doesn't seem upset.
Apologies for that, but we both knew this would end this way.
Before Ned can say anything, Jaime flicks his wrist and his sword slashes through Ned's neck, sending his head toppling to the ground. He lingers a moment to nod respectfully towards the corpse before riding off. He doesn't return to the Red Keep, but heads out the gate and flees westward. Arrogant he might be, but Jaime has no illusion of what he just did. He made an enemy of the North and the Crown. This proves to be wise, as Littlefinger soon reports everything to Robert, whose reaction is thunderous. He spends hours raging in the throne room, kicking over tables and throwing whatever he can against the wall. His roars fill the air. Courtiers wisely keep their distance, staying out of range of these attacks. Even his Kingsguards step aside warily. The only one who braves the storm is Cersei, who places a hand on his shoulder and reminds him that Ned is no longer his hand and has defied him.
That is enough from you, woman. You know nothing, Cersei. Ned may have been an overproud, honorable fool, but he was still my friend, and he had served the realm more dutifully than half the people in this court. I will not hear an unkind thing about him.
Yet he came out of a brothel, Littlefinger said. What kind of honorable man like him walks out of an establishment like that? Perhaps the honor is less an armor and more a cloak to hide his shame. My brother simply caught him for who he is. A lying...
Her words are cut short as Robert strikes her, full in the face, sending her sprawling.
I said that is enough. You speak too much for a woman whose twin just attacked my friend. One more word, and I will have you locked up until your craven brother shows himself.
Cersei knows this is no idle threat. Robert's blood is boiling, and he looks for any opportunity to lash out, even against her. She instead collects herself and marches off. Once she is gone, Robert immediately sends ravens to Castle Rock. Unlike before, which were half-hearted, these are commanding and full of fury. He says that Tywin must present himself to the court immediately to answer for his actions. There have been raids in the Riverlands, and though Tywin frames them as simply attacks from brigands, no one is fooled. Robert then says that Tywin must answer for his incompetence in allowing heavily armored brigands to grow in numbers, and he must bring forth his son and the Mountain for their recent insults to the crown. Unsurprisingly, Tywin does not take this well. Although he has not officially invaded the Riverlands, he has already been mobilizing his forces and sending raids across the border. To surrender now would be a sign of weakness, and would certainly mean the death of Jaime. So the Lord of Castle Rock tries to placate Robert first. He offers to personally hunt down these raiders and even arrest Sir Gregor. He will allow Jaime to be stripped of all positions in court and be made to take the black. He knows he cannot win a war, so instead he must buy time. While Robert has all the cards, Tywin had secured his succession. Joffrey is the heir, and if Robert were to meet some unfortunate accident, he could have Joffrey reverse anything he promises. But the king does not accept this offer. To him, war is no longer something they can avoid, nor does he want to. Robert wants blood, and says he shall accept nothing more than a complete surrender in the heads of Sir Gregor and Jaime. This is an offer that is soundly rejected, and the armies prepare for war. With mobilization already complete, Tywin moves first, streaming out of the Golden Tooth and striking into the Riverlands. His goal was initially to punish them for Tyrion's capture. He knows he cannot linger there and must strike at King's Landing, and fast. As he rides, he sends a flurry of letters to other great houses, urging them to rise up and join his rebellion against Robert. This is met with little fanfare, as most of the great lords and ladies see little reason to aid him. The Martells hate Tywin more than Robert. Both the Starks and Arryns have just lost kin thanks to Lannister aggression, and the Riverlands were just attacked. Even the Tyrells are skeptical of Tywin's offer to marry Margaery to Joffrey. This leaves him almost alone. The few houses that do offer him aid are lesser nobles who had suffered under Robert due to their Targaryen loyalties. Among these are houses Derry, Goodbrick, and Rhaegar, plus a few Crownland houses. But none of them openly defy Robert. They limit their actions to small raids, secretly providing supplies and promise to not impede Lannister passage or provide many troops. This leaves speed as Tywin's only option. If he hurries, he might be able to strike at the Crownlands and threaten King's Landing before other great houses can mobilize. Sir Gregor is sent south to attack the southern Riverlords and hopefully pull troops away from the Reach in the Stormlands to chase him, while Tywin smashes the Riverlords guarding the Golden Tooth. Rather than hit River Run, he instead pivots south, aiming to take the swiftest roads to King's Landing. The only consolation is that the Riverlords are all divided. Many of them have their forces scattered across the regions. Those in the north, like the Lannisters, Blackwoods, and Brackens, are forced to chase after them, while some, like the Freys, don't chase after them at all. Those in the south, like the Derrys, have made secret arrangements to let them pass and speed up their journey. These houses watch them go, silently praying to see the lion and the stag destroy each other. To ensure that they can make a quick getaway, Tywin dispatches Jaime to strike north with a contingent of 5,000 to draw away any nearby Riverlords. Tywin soon turns his attention to Harrenhal, which is old, large, but grossly understaffed. After a brief siege, the castle falls to him, and it becomes his primary base. He leaves a strong garrison behind to protect it and provide a point of retreat as he pushes into the Crownlands. However, Robert has not been idle since this mobilization, and instead sent royal decrees proclaiming Tywin Lannister an enemy of the crown. He urges all of them to strike hard and punish the Old Lion. Already, the North, Riverlands, and Stormlands begin mobilizing. The Reach also reaffirms its allegiance to the crown, and Mace begins gathering his banners. But Robert does not wait for them. He instead turns to the Crownlands. Though their forces are small, he urges them to ride with all their strength towards him. Unfortunately, between the hasty speed and the fact that some houses don't fully mobilize to avoid angering Lord Tywin, Robert only gains about 6,000 troops. He instead sends word to the Stormlands, especially those in the north, like Bronzegate, to reinforce him instead of riding to Storm's End. Though Renly might be their liege lord, they had served Robert before, and now hurried to join him. But Robert is already on the move. He intends to block their passage south to the God's Eye. As he marches, the Stormlanders reinforce him, in small groups or individual lords, as Renly assembles the rest of their forces and begins marching. Robert manages to assemble a force nearly 10,000 strong, and moves to intercept them, joined by the forces of House Vance and Atrenta, who did not accept Tywin's offer. The first clashes take place in a stream that runs through the God's Eye. It is not deep enough to force a river crossing, so the Lannisters stream through, their spears bristling as they thrust towards the Baratheon forces waiting for them. The uneven ground slows them somewhat, but as arrows rain down on the Crownlanders, their lines buckle slightly and leave them vulnerable to the clash. The entire Lannister line surges forward, trying to take advantage of the momentary chaos to stop them, but with the Stormlanders and Riverfolk reinforcing them, the line holds for a time. Robert watches all of this unfold and grits his teeth. It is just as he feared. Though the Crownlands are wealthy and their warriors well equipped, they are the most inexperienced in combat. In contrast, Tywin's men are veterans from the Greyjoy Rebellion and dealing with outlaws. More importantly, they outnumber them by almost 2 to 1. While the narrow forested terrain Robert selected slows them down, it does not stop them, and their weight pushes back against them. Robert pushes his reserve to reinforce the line as he prepares to organize a retreat, but then he sees him. From a nearby hill, Tywin Lannister watches all of this unfold, his jaw clenching as he takes note of the battle. Robert feels a rush of anger wash through him as he roars out. Seizing his hammer, he makes his way to where the fighting is thickest and begins to lay in. Though he is older, he remains large and strong, sweeping his hammer and throwing aside lesser men. Robert's roars echo across the battlefield, leaving men stunned as they watch him fight through the enemies. For a moment, it looks like the Battle of the Trident has come again as the king wades through the waters of this stream, hammer in hand, fully armored. Men-at-arms and even a few knights fall before this charge. He sweeps his hammer around in a wide arc, forcing the enemy to keep their distance, preventing them from closing in on him. But that sight is fleeting. While it seems like Robert remains as powerful as ever, he is older, and his stamina is not what it once was. He soon begins to slow. His blows are heavier, and his breathing ragged. Tywin's knights notice this and surge ahead, eager to capture the king and bring the war to a swift end. It was only the king's guard who saved him. Sir Barristan, Meryn, and Mandon all rush into the shallow to fight alongside their king. They form a protective ring around him and beat the attackers back. Still, this charge is enough to break the Lannister momentum and force them to pull back temporarily. As they organize their army and prepare to charge yet again, horns begin to sound in the rear as more reinforcements arrive. Reports begin to arrive that several Stormlords and Stannis Baratheon are marching up the King's Road to reinforce Robert. Seeing this, Tywin decides to pull back his forces rather than commit to an uncertain battle. The lion banners soon begin to disappear behind the hills and the trees as the Westermen pull back. There is cheering in the camp as the Crownlanders all raise their weapons. Stannis' arrival is met with cheers from the soldiers, who welcome them like heroes. Robert himself embraces his brother when he arrives in his tent.
Your timing is perfect, brother. Always here to save your skin, brother. If it were anyone else, I'd have their tongue. But today you have my thanks. How many men do you bring? 5,000. 3,000 from the Stormlands and 2,000 from the Narrow Sea. So what do you have planned? My sources tell me Tywin has seized Harrenhal. So let's take it back and put Lord Tywin's head on a spike beside his son. Mace Tyrell should have some soldiers to offer by now, and Sir Edmure cannot be far behind. Plus I hear Robb Stark has begun a slow march south as well. On that we agree. But before we march further, you must know the truth about Jon Arryn. There are many more crimes that you do not know about. Truth? What are you saying? I thought he died of a sickness to the stomach. He may very well have, but I cannot be certain. You must know that before he passed, the two of us were looking into the Lannister and Baratheon family trees. Do you not find it strange that none of your children look like you? They lack your strapping body or your dark hair. That is the luck of the draw, I suppose. Not as lucky as you might believe. Every Baratheon born to the royal or noble families was born with dark hair. Even those wed to Targaryens. All except you. What are you saying? I am saying that Cersei has made you a cuckold, to whom I cannot be certain, but Jon Arryn and I had a theory. Jaime Lannister. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer. Are you mad? How could you even consider that possibility? Simple. They all share his features. The Queen has always been fond of him. And who else has the Queen ever regarded with anything remotely resembling respect except for her family?
The king can hardly believe what he's hearing. His jaw falls open, and the whole world seems to go blurry around him as the weight of this claim hits him. It would be easy to dismiss it as falsehood and accuse Stannis of trying to usurp the throne by this. And yet, nothing he says truly feels falsified. His brother was never one to be able to lie, and he certainly never would try to usurp his crown. Meanwhile, his wife certainly seems like the type who would do this. The more he thinks about it, the more it makes too much sense. Not only is it possible, but it would be highly probable, knowing everything he knows about Cersei. And that burns hotter than any dragon flame Balerion could ever produce. Robert lets out a roar, the tent filling with the sound and echoes across the camp. He then sweeps his hand across the table, knocking everything over before flipping it entirely. Stannis watches all of it impassively, brushing some stray food from his sleeve as Robert rages.
When you are done, call me. There is still work to do.
On that, Robert agrees. While the rest of the army rests, he leads the newly arrived cavalry into a sudden charge. Their forces rush into the retreating Lannister columns, which were not expecting an attack so suddenly. Those too slow or on foot are unable to avoid them and are run down. By the time Sir Adam Marbrand organizes the horse for another attack, Robert is already pulling back and preparing for another strike. Though he longs to pursue them further, his men remind him they are still outnumbered, and with only their cavalry, they do not stand a chance at meeting the Lannister forces should they counterattack. Robert reluctantly pulls his forces back and waits for the rest of the army to arrive before continuing the march properly. The blackened towers of Harrenhal rise like jagged teeth above the God's Eye, a ruin of stone and fire twisted by Balerion long ago. Yet within those shattered halls, Tywin Lannister restores his stronghold. His banners fly proudly over the scorched walls, his garrison dug in, prepared to bleed away any man who dared approach. Robert Baratheon arrives first, hammer in hand, his warhorse foaming from the ride. He surveys the fortress grimly. With him come the remnants of the Crownlands and Stormlands. Soon after, the green banners of House Tyrell sweep in from the west. Mace Tyrell brings 20,000 spears and the bold young knight Sir Loras. The River Lords are not far behind, Edmure Tully at their head, their blood still hot from Tywin's raids. They ring Harrenhal with men and siege engines. Rams, towers, catapults, fires burn night and day. But the castle does not yield. Each assault is thrown back. Thousands of men rush forward. Ruined walls make for perfect kill zones and murder holes, where the slick and uneven stones make it difficult for men to find purchase, often slipping and falling on the sand. Boiling pitch rains from the walls. Arrows blot out the sky. The siege towers burn. Tywin's men fight like demons, and the castle's monstrous size makes every breach a trap. Worse, Sir Jaime Lannister and his cavalrymen remain loose in the countryside, cutting supply lines and harassing the rear with brutal efficiency. Several assaults fail, and the siege drags on. Robert drinks more. Edmure curses Tywin with every breath. Loras begs for a chance to scale the walls himself. Still, the lion holds. Instead, they must content themselves with hunting Jaime while the siege drags on. Tywin continues to offer terms, reiterating his willingness to let Jaime take the Black if Robert allows him to live, and even offers to give him the mountain. Yet none of this pacifies Robert. Things only change when Robb Stark arrives. The young wolf marches from the neck with his bannermen close behind. His numbers are modest, but they make no announcement as they lay a trap for Jaime as he tries to forage for food to smuggle into Harrenhal. Scouts report a Lannister column returning to Harrenhal. Robb strikes fast. Beneath the mists of the lakeshore, he springs the trap. The fighting is fierce, steel and screams on muddy ground, but the Northerners pin them between the water and the trees. Jaime tries to break out, leading a desperate charge, but he's unhorsed, surrounded. He fights like wildfire, a blur of gold and blood, but Greywind lunges for his throat, and Greatjon Umber slams him to the ground. The Kingslayer is taken, alive, but humiliated. With Jaime captured, Tywin's mobile threat collapses. Robb rides into Robert's camp to thunderous cheers. Jaime is placed on a pavilion outside with chains on his wrists. Seeing this, many men lose heart, and at last, a breach is made. The southern curtain wall collapses under relentless fire. Siege towers grind forward. Battering rams pan the gates. Robert prepares to lead the charge himself, but in the dead of night, treachery strikes. Sir Meryn Trant and Sir Mandon Moore enter the king's tent under the guise of reporting scouts. As Robert turns, Mandon lunges with a dagger, only for Sir Barristan Selmy to intercept. The Lord Commander hurls himself between them, blade flashing. Meryn dies with his throat slit. Mandon staggers back with a gut wound before Barristan finishes him. Robert lives, barely, but now he is done waiting. At dawn, the final assault begins. The breach becomes a flood. Stormlanders, Riverlords, and Northerners surge through the broken wall. Fighting rages in the lower bailey, through smoke and rubble. Screams echo through stone halls as Tywin's men make their last stand. Tywin Lannister does not flee. The old lion dons his golden armor, grim and magnificent. He carves through Edmure's men in the courtyard, kills a Knight of the Reach with a thrust through the eye, but the tide is against him. Robert finds him near the shattered doors of the Great Hall. No words are exchanged, only looks. Robert raises his warhammer. Tywin strikes first, but he is slower now, older. His blade crushes against Robert's pauldron, but the king shrugs it off and slams his hammer into Tywin's chest. Bones crack. The next blow crushes his helm like tin. The old lion falls. Harrenhal is taken. The lion banners burn in the courtyard. Jaime is dragged before the king in chains. Sir Gregor Clegane vanishes into the wilderness, wounded and unaccounted for. The lesser lords who follow Tywin now scramble to bend the knee or flee for their lives. Robert stands on the battlements, his cloak torn, his hammer dripping red. The wind howls through the broken towers.
The lion is dead. Now we end the war.
Seeing Tywin Lannister dead, the remaining soldiers surrender and are forced to swear an oath of loyalty to Robert, reaffirming their loyalty. Some lose land, others lose gold, or are forced to hand over hostages, but none are allowed to go until Robert has his confession. While Tywin's head is displayed out in the main courtyard, Jaime is kept under lock and key. Robert fully intends to kill him, but decides to speak with him first. As the guests wonder what the delay is, the king descends the steps to the dungeon, accompanied by Stannis. The two find Jaime in a dark cell, chained to the wall, but smiling faintly at them.
Your Grace, did you come here to have me resume my duties in the Kingsguard? Even on your last days, you sound as smug as ever, Kingslayer. Part of my charm, I suppose. I hope you understand that you are a dead man walking, Sir Jaime. I fully intend to have you executed here and now, but I would like to get a confession from you. Is this about Ned Stark? Very well. I killed him and his men. Now, may I return to reflecting on my life decisions? Do not play dumb with me, Kingslayer. He isn't playing, brother. Listen to me. What you did to Ned Stark is known far and wide. You're called the Kingslayer for a reason. Why would anyone be surprised you killed the Hand? What we are interested in are answers regarding your other great treason, Cersei Lannister.
Then, and only then, does surprise flicker across Jaime's face. His eyes widen as he looks at them, but he quickly composes himself and shakes his head.
I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you now? It must have been a terrible lay if a celibate would forget about it.
Anger flashes across Jaime's eyes. He stares at the king, but to Robert, it is just permission to continue. He levels a hard look at him and smiles.
Between you and me, I've been married to her for nearly 15 years. I understand. Say that was steel in your hands, your grace. A decade ago, I would have gladly taken you up on that offer, but not now. You will die, but not with your sword in your hand. Neither will your sister. You wouldn't dare. I would. You see, I never cared for your sister. I only married her to appease your father, and he's not here anymore. If we haven't been clear, you have already been marked for death, Sir Jaime, as has your sister. The manner of your death, though, has yet to be determined. You see, if you make this decision, and we are forced to pry a confession from you, Lady Melisandre has suggested offering you up to the Lord of Light, alongside the Queen. But if you make things easy, and confess now, then we will be moved by your loyalty to behead her. Quickly. Cleanly.
Jaime tries to attack them. He lurches forward, the chains being the only thing that holds them back, but it doesn't stop him from trying. After a moment's struggle, the full realization of their words sinks in, and he realizes he is in a treacherous position. None of his daring or anger will get him out of here now. There is only one way to move things forward. He bows his head and tells them everything he and Cersei has done. And an hour later, Jaime repeats those words to the rest of the lords and ladies in Harrenhal. He spares no details about his illicit affairs with the Queen, saying where they had done it, where the children were conceived, and what led to it. As that happens, Jaime is made to stare at the people, watching their expressions change from shock to disgust. He watches as they all curse and spit at him again, just as they had done when he first killed Aerys. When Robert is satisfied, he calls for a sword and personally executes Jaime himself, recalling how Ned Stark used to do this with all his executions. He does not do this to Cersei, though. Instead, he sends a raven to Sir Ilyn with instructions for Cersei to be beheaded as well. He also sends orders for the remainder of the Kingsguard to detain the children and keep them in their chambers until he returns. Robert urges them to be careful and warns that the Lannisters still may have allies in the city. Fortunately, Renly moves some of his troops to King's Landing and secures it, personally taking charge of the children's capture. By the time Robert gets back, many of the Queen's allies are either detained or have been executed. The highest-ranking ones, like Pycelle and Varys, are spared, being locked inside the black cells to await the King's judgment. But while their fates are sealed, what will happen to the children is a difficult question. With the incest allegations all but proven, they are not Robert's true heirs and could potentially be a rallying point for the Lannisters or other potential rebels. Some call for their executions to prevent them from ever becoming a threat, but others point out the issues.
Be careful with this idea, brother. Bastards or not, they are still children, and no one will like seeing them be executed. They aren't just children. They are a danger to the crown's stability, and we have just killed their parents. They may not soon forget that. Joffrey I can understand. He's always been a little shit, and will try to retaliate. But Marcella and Tommen, they hardly seem like the type who would hold a grudge or raise a sword in anger. It is not them I worry about, but those who might use their position to gain legitimacy. So are you prepared to do it, brother? You've always known them to be your nephews and niece. Are you prepared to take their heads and present them to the crown? Of course not. I merely point out the risk. If we do nothing, we risk leaving the realm open for rebellion in the future. If you wish to go through with this plan, you must understand the risks.
Robert looks at his brothers, rubbing his temples as he tries to collect his thoughts. This was much more challenging than he anticipated, but he reminds himself that this is for the good of the realm and Ned Stark. Everything he's known has been challenging, and the things he once held as fact are now being tossed upside down. He can hardly make sense of what's true anymore, but there is one thing he at least takes as gospel, and that is that heroes do not kill children. He thinks back to his time during the rebellion, when he first entered the Red Keep and found the bodies of Aegon and Rhaenys. He recalls staring at the bloodied corpses hidden by the throne. At the time, he was disgusted, but also relieved that he did not have to give the command. But now, all he can taste is bile in his throat at the action. How could he have allowed this to happen? He will not allow this to happen again, and makes his announcement. The children will not be executed. Instead, they will be given a chance to swear allegiance to the crown. They will never be heirs, but if they serve well, he might allow them to hold lands in the future. With this, Marcella and Tommen gladly pledged their fealty to Robert. Neither of them ever truly wanted the crown. But they are the easy ones, and the real problem is Joffrey. The boy is sullen and arrogant, even as he is brought forward to face his supposed father. Joffrey spits defiance and insists the rumors are lies, but in the end, he cannot do anything more. Joffrey cannot instill fear in the way Tywin could, and he has never been popular with the nobles or people, so all he can do is meekly accept these terms. The war is over, but Robert remains at war with himself, with his memories, and with a kingdom still bleeding. Though Ned is gone, he is almost certain what the Lord of Winterfell would have wanted. Stop the feasting, stop the whoring, stop the hatred. In truth, Robert supposed he always knew. He just never got around to doing it. In the months that follow Harrenhal, he throws himself into rebuilding the realm. The first matter is to get rid of the Lannister supporters. Most of the Lannisters in the capital are dismissed, allowing to leave unharmed with their dignity, so long as they commit no crimes. Among them is Tyrion Lannister, who was allowed to rule Castle Rock. Other Lannisters are less fortunate, as the likes of Pycelle and Varys are executed for the conspiracy. The only one spared is Littlefinger, as they can find no true connection between him and the Lannisters. In fact, his story of how he was helping Ned investigate the Lannister incest helps save his head. The treasury is near emptied, but the Tyrells are flush with gold, and grain flows freely from the Reach. Robert forces himself into the grim tedium of diplomacy, negotiating favorable terms with Mace Tyrell, not through charm or threats, but by swallowing his pride and listening. Renly proves critical here as the go-between them, ensuring that tempers do not flare, and Mace is suitably rewarded. The results show. Coin trickles back into the capital. Grain prices drop. For the first time in years, the small folk eat well in the streets of King's Landing. Robert repays part of the crown's debt to the Iron Bank, enough to keep them placated for now, and Stannis proves his worth by drafting budgets that allow them to repay their debts, provided that Robert cuts down on feasts and tourneys. Only when a modicum of stability is returned to the realm does Robert embark on another personal mission, to escort Lord Stark's bones to Winterfell. He leaves the capital in the capable hands of his brothers to head north. When he arrives, Robert comes not as a king, but just another mourner. He does not bring a large escort, simply his Kingsguard and a few servants, as he personally guides Ned Stark's remains into the crypts, laying them beside his siblings and father. Catelyn and her children watch in astonishment as Robert kneels before them with his head bowed.
Lady Stark, children of Lord Eddard, I come to you to fulfill a task long overdue. With me, I come with the remains of your father, to lay him to rest where he belongs. He had served me well as hand for those short months, and as a friend for even longer. That service is something I can never repay.
Thank you, Your Grace. Your words are kind, and we are pleased to hear that Lord Stark's sacrifice has not been forgotten.
It hasn't. Not by me. That is why I also come here, not just to fulfill this task, but also to beg your forgiveness.
Forgiveness? For what?
For my foolishness, boy. Ned had served me well. He had given me advice and tried to steer me right, but I was too blind to see it. He had always been a dutiful man, but I mistook honor for weakness. I saw caution as hesitation. He tried to show me what was right in front of me, and I foolishly turned a blind eye. For that, he paid the price.
Catelyn watches him on his knees and clenches his fist. She had been angry when she heard of what happened, and a part of her even blamed Robert for it. But whatever angry words she had seemed to melt. Instead, she gently pushed his chin up and regarded him thoughtfully.
What you say is true. Ned went south because he believed he could guide you. He knew the risk. He knew the Lannisters were scheming and plotting. He hoped to protect you, as he did. Now you stand here, having learned it. Though it was later than he would have liked, you've learned. And he would not be prouder to have known that. He would be proud, Robert. Right now, on your knees, you are more king than you ever were before.
Hearing this, Robert closes his eyes and begins to tear up. Robert lets out a wail, and Catelyn soon joins him. The two embrace as they sob on the cold floor. The other Stark children follow, sharing their grief together. That night, beneath the heart tree, he shares silence with Robb. No words can undo what happened, but the next morning, Robert names him Lord Protector of the North, a title that carries more weight than Warden. It is not just a political gesture, it is penance. But Robert does not stop with titles. He soon backs it up with action. When word reaches him from the wall and the growing chaos there, a cold pang hits his gut. Robb Stark writes personally, relaying concerns from Jon Snow. The Night's Watch is dwindling, its defenses weakening. Robert responds. He dispatches fresh recruits, ships supplies north, and orders a new levy from the Crownlands for Castle Black. It isn't much, but it's something. For once, Robert listens to the North. He also hires sellswords and tasks them with rebuilding and reinforcing the wall. When he returns to King's Landing, there's a visible change. Robert seems steadier. He whips the small council into longer, sharper sessions. During these meetings, Robert restricts his wine consumption and listens to their discussions. He walks the streets in disguise to see the damage firsthand. He dismisses sycophants and names competent knights to rebuild the city watch. He orders the harbors dredged and granaries repaired, and the roads secured. But the fire inside him still smolders. He gives up the brothels. His usual companions are gone, replaced by scrolls, ledgers, and long walks in the gardens. Of course, he makes sure his children are taken care of. While he never legitimizes them, he ensures their lives are comfortable. But the drink remains. Some days he resists, other days he doesn't. His moods swing like a warhammer, furious one hour, melancholy the next. He still bellows in council when angered, still leaves behind broken goblets and bloodied knuckles. The question of marriage returns again and again. His lords urge him to take a new queen, someone from the Reach or the Vale, someone young and fertile. He refuses. Every proposal is waved away, and every time the same grim reply.
I've buried one wife already. I will not bury another. Not for all the gold in Castle Rock.
What he does turn his energy on is combat. The war had shown him how far he had truly fallen. In his youth, he might have been able to end it with a furious charge, but he has slowed down and allowed himself to get soft. He spends days training with Sir Barristan and the other knights of the Red Keep. He demands they pull no punches and threatens to have them executed if they dare not give their all. This leaves the fight favoring the old knight instead of Robert, yet the king accepts these with laughs and sardonic looks. Sir Barristan advises him, telling him how to strengthen himself once again, and the efforts show. It is slow, but some of the vitality returns. Some of it. The simple truth is that Robert is growing old, and he has not kept up. The energy lost to time cannot be recovered, no matter what. Stannis is the bluntest in this assessment, reminding him that even Sir Barristan is slowing down. The difference is that he had not spent a decade and a half feasting and stuffing himself with food and allowed his body to slip so much. It is for the honesty in Renly's charm that Robert begins leaning more heavily on his brothers. Stannis and Renly, once cold and estranged, slowly become his trusted pillars. Stannis handles the realm's defenses and naval repairs. Renly works with the court, smoothing tensions between lords, keeping the Reach and the Crown aligned. They bicker, of course, like wildfire, oil, and wine, but Robert stands between them, and for now that's enough. Together the Baratheon brothers begin to resemble something like a government, shaky but present, unified but fragile. And in the background, Peter Baelish smiles. Littlefinger is indispensable in the realm's financial recovery. He brokers grain shipments, secures credit from the banks, and quietly helps noble houses ruined by war rebuild their fortunes. His books show growth. His coffers remain full. To many minor lords, he becomes not just the master of coin, but the hand that feeds. He arranges marriages, one here, another there. A bankrupt Crownlander weds a daughter of a wealthy knight in the Stormlands. A minor river lord finds his son matched to a Tyrell cousin. These alliances seem harmless at first, even helpful, but slowly all roads lead through Baelish. Houses once loyal to the crown now whisper of their debt to Peter. Some call him a king's man, others a better steward than the king himself. Robert hears these whispers. He hears them and growls. but he cannot deny the books are balanced, the food is moving, and the realm is breathing again. At least, for now. But months later, the ships come at dawn, black sails against the blood-red sky. They rise on the mists of Massey's Hook, their hulls filled with soldiers from across the sea. Daenerys Targaryen stands at the prow of her flagship, wind in her silver hair, her eyes narrowed at the coast. Her dragons soar overhead, terrible shadows against the rising sun. Beside her, Jorah Mormont and Grey Worm stand ready, flanked by legions of Unsullied. Beneath them are sellswords, exiled, freedmen, and fanatics. Far from the coast, in candlelit halls and smoky taverns, Peter Baelish plays his last and greatest game. The Master of Coin vanishes from the court, only to appear in the halls of minor lords, in the bedchambers of daughters promised to rich husbands, in the counting houses of greedy merchants. He trades gold for loyalty, secrets for oaths, names for knives. He activates old debts and quiet threats, awakening sleeper allies across the Stormlands, Westerlands, and Crownlands. Dozens of minor houses whom he lifted up begin declaring for Daenerys, or simply refuse royal summons. Dorne rises at first. They need no bribes from Baelish. The banners of Sunspear are unfurled with a cry for Elia, for the children, for fire and blood. In the streets of Maidenpool, Hayford, and even parts of the Reach, riots erupt as the Dragon Queen begins her advance. Many recall when the dragon once ruled them, and some long for those days. They clash in the streets with those who remain in the King's Men, forcing the Lord to focus on quelling these rebellions before even considering marching east to fight Robert. Even in the shadow of King's Landing, some Crownland houses try to defy Robert and pay dearly for it. The first few days are spent crushing these rebels, or bottling them up in Cracklaw Point. The few who do try to rise up are crushed, but Robert loses precious time, and by the time the last stronghold is taken, Massey's Hook has fallen. In the war tent outside King's Landing, Robert stands between his brothers. There is no laughter, no japes, only armor, maps, and cold resolve.
We hold the line. We fight until the last torch burns out.
And what about her dragons?
She has dragons, yes, but dragons are not gods. They bleed. They burn. Ballistas, poison, even magic can bring them down. I will use whatever I can to bring them to heel.
The Stormlands stand with us, so does the Reach, even the West. But we fight in our own kingdoms. There are traitors in every holdfast, and it will take time to stop them. Soon, steel meets flames as Robert rides out with the Stormlanders, Crownlanders, and a few Rivermen. They fight for every castle taken and try to recapture them. In raw fighting power, the Westerosi have the advantage, with only the Unsullied being able to match them in skill. Sellswords are fickle, the Dothraki too few, and freedmen untrained. In a fair fight, there is rarely a question about who will win. Stannis tries to bottle the armies up and buy time for them. He creates a series of forts to hold them back, but fights are not always fair. Dragons sweeping low, burning siege engines and fields alike. Just as defensive efforts are made, Drogon and Daenerys sweep down and blow a hole in their defenses, making containment impossible. Soon, the army spreads across the Seven Kingdoms. Robert fortifies King's Landing with scores of ballista and scorpions, and wildfire is created along with special poisons meant to bring down large beasts. All of this ensures that when Daenerys begins her initial attack, it is held off until Stannis and his troops harass her supply lines and force her to pull back. The Riverlands smolder. The Stormlanders march under blackened skies. The Reach fights on, but its knights must also beat back rebellion at home, as well as raids from Dorne, who march towards Highgarden. Only the North remains truly unbroken, completely loyal to Robert, as Robb Stark rides down from the Neck, refusing to bow to the dragon. Soon, Daenerys directs her troops to the Riverlands. If they are able to join up with the Dornish and the rebels in the Reach, they will become impossible to stop. Stannis lays out the plan to stop them. He finds a grove where they must pass to attack and prepares his defenses there. It would be too risky to try and strike Drogon down, so instead, he baits Rhaegal. He has a supply caravan appear along this route, prompting the attention of Rhaegal and Daenerys' advanced guard. They quickly overwhelm the drivers who flee or are cut down. The dragon helps himself to the meat stores, but in the distance, longbowmen fire upon the wagons. These arrows ignite the wildfire hidden in the other supply carts. This fire is instantaneous and sets the entire grove ablaze. Men scream as they are consumed by the flames, stumbling and trying to remove their burning armor. With their lines in chaos, a cavalry unit rushes in, emerging from the smoke and running down the survivors. Stannis is at their head and bursts in from the smoke like an avenging god, sword in his hands. Rhaegal tries to fly up, flapping his wings as the wildfire singes his body. But as he gains altitude, the scorpions all fire at once, turning the sky into a storm of ballista bolts. Rhaegal manages to avoid many of these, but some graze his wings and flank. This leaves him to lose ground, where catapults holding wildfire fire directly upon him. Rhaegal screams as green fire consumes him mid-flight. He crashes into the forest, trees exploding into flame, his death wails echoing for miles. But the retaliation is swift and merciless. Drogon descends on Hayford and turns the town into embers. Civilians are roasted alive. Thousands die. Smoke chokes the horizon. The sky glows red for days. Other castles follow. Stokeworth, Rosby, and Sharppoint are burned to cinders. King's Landing narrowly survives. Only the wind shifting west saves it from the fire. In the Riverlands, the sellswords and Dothraki are released upon the populace, burning towns and castles that had refused to join them. Soon after, Dorne unleashes its fury upon the Reach as well. Reports soon flood into the capital, showcasing the full extent of the destruction. Entire towns lay low, small folk were slaughtered, and lords were poisoned. But it isn't just in the letters that Robert sees it. He also visits some of the sites. The king walks alone through the ruins of a village that once fed King's Landing. Smoke still curls from the rafters. Charred corpses lie in ditches. A little girl's doll melts beside a burnt-out cottage. A knight screams in the distance, his lungs burned, his flesh falling away. Soldiers sit on their heels, vomiting from the stench. A mother clutches her dead son in her lap, rocking, eyes blank. Robert says nothing. He simply drops to one knee and puts his head in his hands. When he rises, he walks back to camp and sends for his brothers. The war drags on. Ash rains from the sky like snow. Smoke coils above the riverlands and the stormlands, blotting the sun. The ground is slick with blood in some places, scorched black in others. Every day more villages burn. Every night, the crying never stops. Stannis and Renly enter, both still in armor, dirt and blood smeared on their cloaks. Robert doesn't rise.
If we keep fighting, there'll be nothing left to win. I took this throne to save the realm. Maybe I'll end it now to do the same.
We were able to take down one of the dragons. They only lash out because they know they are vulnerable. Grant me more poison. I might be able to take down the white one.
And what will it give us? Another quarter of my kingdom burned to the ground? No, I cannot allow it. If we fight, then it is the people who will bleed for us. You've read the reports. You've seen what she's been doing. All the more reason to punish her and remind her that she cannot escape justice. Oh, I intend to remind her. But does that need to be on the battlefield? You can't be serious. You can't consider talking on terms now. The Targaryen girl has gone too far. I must try, even if it means relinquishing my crown. You're Robert Baratheon. You won the rebellion. You shattered Rhaegar. You crushed the Targaryens. Now you want to bend the knee to one? I want to stop burying children.
You propose abdication.
I propose peace. Call it what you like.
I call it foolishness.
What happens when she decides to throw another temper tantrum? Joffrey might beat a child or kick a dog, but this girl has dragons. Stannis has the right of it. Peace? She'll execute us. Or worse, burn us. That's what her father would have done. She's not her father. At least I pray she is not. If we keep going, we'll make her worse than him. You saw what that dragon did to Hayford. Saw what was left of the river crossing.
Stannis' jaw clenches. He saw it too. Civilians charred black, men screaming beneath collapsed stone. Half the riverlands smolder, and still the nobles whisper treason. Still Littlefinger's allies stir revolt in the west and south. The realm tears at itself like a wounded beast.
We have the numbers. One dragon is dead. We can still win. And at what cost? Another dragon dies and she'll torch every field from here to Dawn. We can win, but we'll burn the realm to do it. And I've done enough burning.
Robert stands now, slowly. His armor creaks with rust and old blood. He's thinner than before. His face is grayer, hollower. He steps to the crown on the table and looks at it, not with pride, but with shame.
I killed Rhaegar on the Trident and thought the war was won. But the real war was ruling, and I lost that one long ago. This isn't glory. This is ash.
Not entirely. We set things right. Fixed some of the mistakes we made.
We did. Hopefully that will count for something. But I won't let it go to waste.
We base all of this hoping Aerys' daughter sees reason, and on the hope that she will carry on our work.
Stannis, what was that thing you always said about putting a cart before the horse? I've been struck for nearly 15 years. Maybe it's time I take a closer look at where my cart is, eh?
You know, if she refuses, we'll be dead men. Even if she accepts the terms, we still might be dead.
That's why I'm not going to ask either of you to come with me.
No. We go together.
I'm not trusting you to handle negotiations.
The three brothers stare at one another. Then Robert chuckles, Renly smiles, and Stannis rolls his eyes. But all three of them march out and draft their letters. Soon enough, they get their answers, and a meeting is established on Dragonstone, a place Daenerys has long sought to capture, but which Stannis has stubbornly resisted capturing. Now the three brothers sit across from Daenerys Stormborn.
So, you have come here to discuss terms with me, usurper. Very well. Let us hear them.
You crave the throne, and I hold it. So long as we fight, the Seven Kingdoms bleed. So instead, I offer a path that will satisfy everyone. I shall abdicate the throne in favor of you.
The words are spoken so casually and so plainly that Daenerys struggles to believe at first.
You? You shall hand over the Iron Throne?
Is that so hard to believe? This war benefits no one. I have lost countless good men to your dragonfire, and you have had to bury one of your dragons. Make no mistake, I would rather you not bury anyone.
I see. It's simply that I had not expected you to be this way.
What way is that? Reasonable? Fair? A few years ago, I wouldn't have even considered this offer. But time has a way of changing people. And loss.
Indeed it does. Very well. What else do you want?
I will abdicate, but my family will retain control over Storm's End. We will relinquish Dragonstone out of respect for your family. And while I will no longer be king, I ask that my brothers be allowed to serve. You will find them excellent advisors.
Your brothers. Very well. What role shall they play?
Stannis shall remain master of ships, and Renly master of law. Although, if you are not opposed, I would advise marrying one of them. It would help secure your rule on the Iron Throne.
Daenerys blinks and is taken aback, but soon realizes that this wasn't just some jest, but a true suggestion. She considers it, and first agrees to let them remain on her small council. However, as time goes on, she eventually agrees to marry Renly. Stannis, meanwhile, is later given Storm's End, under the approval of her advisors. With that, Robert at last resigns from court. He leaves King's Landing and kingship behind him, instead retiring to serve in the Stormlands as its protector. Though he is no longer a lord, Robert spends the rest of his days serving the realm. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.